Imagine a land known for politeness, maple syrup, and snow-covered peace, secretly ruled by a network of criminals powerful enough to rival Mexico's cartels and Italy's Mafia. They called it the Quiet North, but behind that quiet, there was money, blood, and betrayal. This is the story of the Canadian cartels no one talks about. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, because what you're about to hear is not in the headlines, but it is written in blood. For decades, Canada has been seen as the safe neighbor, but underneath that calm surface, the country has quietly become one of the most profitable drug and money laundering hubs in the world. It didn't start with violence. It started with opportunity. When U.S. borders tightened in the 1980s, organized crime needed new trade routes. The Canadian coastline, stretching thousands of miles with minimal surveillance, became a paradise for smugglers. Cocaine from Colombia, heroin from Asia, and meth from Mexico all found their way north, then slipped quietly into American cities. The world thought of cartels as Mexican, but in truth, the Canadians were pulling strings behind the curtain, using banks, shipping routes, and political connections. Let's start with Vancouver. The Port of Vancouver, Canada's gateway to the Pacific, isn't just one of the busiest ports in North America. It's one of the dirtiest. Billions of dollars worth of drugs and cash flow through its containers every year. Who runs it? A coalition of triads, biker gangs, and ex-cartel traffickers. The Hells Angels dominate the streets. The Big Circle Boys, an offshoot of Chinese organized crime, control the imports. Together, they've built an empire so cleanly integrated into legitimate business that even law enforcement admits they can't tell where the legal trade ends and the criminal begins. A former RCMP investigator called it the ghost economy. No fingerprints, no headlines, just silent profit. But Vancouver is only one chapter. Travel east to Montreal, a city that once bowed to the Italian Mafia, now ruled by a new generation of players. After Vito Rizzuto, the so-called Canadian Godfather, died in 2013, the old guard fell apart. But power never disappears. It only shifts hands. Albanian groups moved in. Street gangs from Toronto expanded their reach. And suddenly, the cocaine highways that once belonged to one man were now open to everyone ruthless enough to take them. The Canadian underworld became a battlefield, quiet, precise, and deadly. Bodies started showing up in the Laurentian forests, execution style, no witnesses, no noise, just messages sent in silence. You might wonder, how did all this crime stay invisible? Simple. Canada's greatest strength became its biggest weakness. Its clean financial system. Unlike the violent cartels of Latin America, Canadian syndicates didn't need to fight. They invested. They laundered billions through real estate, casinos, shell companies, and cryptocurrency. In Vancouver alone, luxury condos bought with drug money became so common that economists gave it a name, the Vancouver model. Here's how it worked. Dirty cash from fentanyl or cocaine was brought into local casinos. It was washed through chips, converted back to clean money, and reinvested into properties. Those properties were later sold at inflated prices, creating the illusion of legitimate wealth. Politicians blamed foreign buyers for housing inflation, but insiders knew the market was being pumped by drug cash. And it wasn't just a few $1,000,000. Estimates suggest over $40 billion a year flows through Canadian laundering networks. That's not organized crime. That's organized business. Now let's talk about the new players, the fentanyl kings. When America declared war on opioids, production didn't stop. It moved. British Columbia became a central hub for synthetic drugs supplied by labs linked to Chinese triads and distributed by local gangs. One Canadian town, Surrey, saw more overdose deaths than some American cities twice its size. But the cartels didn't slow down. They adapted. They got richer. Law enforcement, overwhelmed and underfunded, called it an invisible war. And the most shocking part? These syndicates operate with corporate discipline, board meetings, profit reports, lawyers on retainer. No flashy shootouts, no chaos, just calculated empire building. A senior intelligence officer once said, "Canada isn't a cartel battleground, it's a cartel sanctuary." But power breeds greed. By the late 2010s, rival factions began turning on each other. Assassinations became frequent, drive-bys in Toronto, bombings in Montreal, even hitmen hired through encrypted apps like Telegram. One name stands out: Jonathan Seidler, a mid-level enforcer turned informant. In a leaked RCMP transcript, Seidler described how the syndicates worked with corrupt customs officers and financial advisors to keep their pipelines open. He said, "They don't wear tattoos or chains anymore. They wear suits, drive Teslas, and sponsor charity events." He disappeared 2 months later. Today, the Canadian underworld looks nothing like the movies. It's smarter, richer, and quieter. The banks process billions, the ports stay open, and the blood washes away with the rain. Canada's image remains spotless, but if you peel back the maple leaf, you'll see a shadow stretching from Vancouver to Montreal, a silent empire built on drugs, deceit, and diplomacy. The cartels of the North aren't just surviving, they're thriving. Because in a world obsessed with violence, the smartest criminals are the ones who never make a sound. If this story opened your eyes to a darker side of Canada, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us, do you think the Canadian cartels have infiltrated politics? Because next time, we'll dive into the allegations that some of Canada's biggest banks might be doing more than just looking the other way. Until then, stay sharp. In the world of organized crime, silence isn't golden, it's profitable.